Imagine heating your home for $0, no gas bill, no electricity, no firewood you have to buy. Sounds impossible, right? Your great-grandparents did it every single winter. During the Great Depression, 25% of Americans were unemployed. Millions of families had no electricity, no central heating, and barely enough food to survive. Rural homes were drafty wooden shacks with gaps in the walls you could see daylight through. And winter didn't care about the economy. Yet somehow, these families made it through. Year after year, brutal cold after brutal cold. They didn't have space heaters, they didn't have generators. They didn't have YouTube tutorials or prepper supply stores. What they had was desperation, creativity, and a handful of simple tricks passed down from their own parents and grandparents. Here's what's interesting: these methods still work. In February 2021, Texas lost power for days. 4 million homes went dark. Over 200 people died from hypothermia and carbon monoxide poisoning. Store shelves emptied within hours, and the people who survived the best weren't the ones with the most money. They were the ones who understood the basics of staying warm without modern technology. Today, I am going to show you 9 Depression-era tricks that kept families alive through the harshest winters in American history. These aren't theories, these are documented methods from people who actually lived through it. And every single one of them can be used today if the power goes out and the temperature keeps dropping. Let's start with the most important one. Trick number 1, the one-room strategy. The first trick is what I call the one-room strategy. During the Depression, families didn't try to heat their entire house. They picked one room, usually the kitchen, and that became their entire living space for the winter. Here's how it worked. They would hang heavy blankets or old quilts over every doorway leading to the rest of the house. This sealed off the unused rooms completely. Then everyone, and I mean everyone, would eat, sleep, work, and live in that single heated room. The cooking stove in the center provided both warmth and hot meals. One fire, one room, one family surviving together. This simple change reduced fuel consumption by 60 to 80%. A first-hand account from Nova Scotia in the 1920s describes it perfectly. The family's wood stove ran continuously all winter. The children would even crawl behind the stove to absorb extra heat after coming in from the cold. The modern application is straightforward. If you lose power in winter, pick your smallest room. Use plastic sheeting or heavy blankets to seal the doorways. Run a space heater if you have generator power, or gather everyone together and let body heat do the work. Don't try to heat empty rooms. Concentrate your warmth. Trick number 2, newspaper insulation. The second trick is newspaper insulation. Poor families during the Depression discovered that old newspapers made surprisingly effective insulation. They would paste newspapers onto walls using a simple mixture of flour and water. Multiple layers created tiny air pockets that trapped heat inside the home. More importantly, they stuffed crumpled newspapers into every crack, gap, and opening they could find. Around windows, under doors, in the gaps between floorboards. Anywhere cold air was leaking in. Historical photos from 1936 show Depression-era kitchens with walls completely covered in newspaper. One Appalachian account explains that folks used newspapers as wallpaper to plug cracks in the wall and keep the home a little warmer. They might have been poor in money, but they were rich in common sense. Here's the modern application. While you probably won't paste newspapers to your walls, crumpled newspaper stuffed into window gaps or around door frames works as emergency insulation during a crisis. You can also stuff newspapers inside your clothing for extra body insulation. It's the same principle as synthetic insulation. Trapped air equals trapped heat. Keep a stack of old newspapers with your emergency supplies. They weigh nothing and could save your life. Trick number 3, the hot brick bed warmer. The third trick is the hot brick bed warmer. Before electric blankets existed, families heated bricks in their wood stove or oven until they were almost too hot to touch. Then they wrap the bricks in old towels or flannel cloth and place them at the foot of the bed about 30 minutes before sleep. Bricks have excellent thermal mass. They absorb heat slowly and release it slowly. A properly heated brick wrapped in cloth can stay warm for 6 to 8 hours, keeping your feet warm all night long. One account from a family in the 1940s describes the father putting house bricks in the oven, wrapping them in a towel, and warming the beds before the children climbed in. Another source notes that with flannel sheets, heavy blankets, and a warm brick for your feet, the brick holds its heat until morning. The modern application is simple. If you have a way to heat something, whether that's a wood stove, a gas oven, or even a campfire, you can heat bricks, stones, or even sealed containers of hot water. Wrap them well to prevent burns. Place them in your bed before you get in. Your body will do the rest. Trick number 4, the stove as command center. The fourth trick is using your stove as a command center. During the Depression, the kitchen stove wasn't just for cooking. It was the heating system, the water heater, the clothes dryer, and the food preservation hub all in one. A detailed account from rural Nova Scotia describes a wood-fired stove with a warming oven in the back for keeping food hot and drying wet mittens. There was a water tank on the right side that provided hot water for washing and bathing. A kettle stayed on top constantly, adding moisture to the dry winter air. The family's Saturday night baths were heated entirely from a copper boiler on that stove. The key insight here is multitasking. Every fire you burn should do more than one job. For modern application, if you have a wood stove, fireplace, or even a propane camp stove during an emergency, think beyond just heating the room. Place a pot of water on top to humidify the air and prevent dry skin and respiratory issues. Use the heat to warm water for washing. Dry wet clothes nearby. Cook your meals. Heat bricks for your bed. One heat source, multiple survival functions. This is how Depression-era families stretched every piece of firewood to its maximum value. Waste nothing, use everything. Trick number 5, heavy curtains and window blankets. The fifth trick is covering your windows with heavy fabric. Windows are the biggest source of heat loss in any home. During the Depression, families hung thick blankets, quilts, or multiple layers of heavy curtains over every window. According to the Department of Energy, even basic draperies reduce heat loss by up to 10%. Insulated or quilted coverings can reduce heat loss by 40% or more. That's a massive difference when you're trying to keep a room warm with limited fuel. The Depression-era method was simple. During the day, if the sun was shining, they would open the curtains to capture free solar heat. As soon as the sun went down, the curtains were closed tight and stayed closed until morning. For modern application, keep thermal curtains or heavy blankets ready to hang over windows during power outages. You can even tape emergency mylar blankets behind your curtains. The reflective surface bounces heat back into the room. Moving blankets from the hardware store work extremely well and cost very little. Trick number 6, the body heat huddle. The sixth trick is the body heat huddle. Families during the Depression didn't have separate bedrooms for each child. Everyone slept in the same room, often in the same bed, sharing body heat under heavy quilts. Historical accounts describe children huddling together under thin blankets, listening to the wind against their fragile home, knowing that their combined warmth was the only thing keeping them from freezing. Parents slept on the outside edges. Children slept in the middle where it was warmest. This isn't just folklore. Human bodies generate about 100 watts of heat each. For people in one bed under heavy blankets can keep that space surprisingly warm even in extreme cold. The modern application is straightforward. During a winter power outage, have everyone sleep in the same room. Share blankets. If you have pets, let them sleep with you. Their body heat helps too. Position the most vulnerable people, children and elderly, in the warmest spots. Pride doesn't matter when the temperature is dropping, survival does. Trick number 7, the Hobo lamp heater. The seventh trick is the Hobo lamp heater. This was a survival method used by homeless men riding the rails during the Depression. It's a simple device made from a tin can, some sand, cooking oil or kerosene, and a cloth wick. You fill the can partially with sand, soak the sand with oil, insert a rag as a wick, and light it. The sand absorbs the oil and feeds it slowly to the wick, creating a small, steady flame that provides both light and heat for hours. Hobos use these in rail cars, under bridges, and in makeshift camps across America. The materials cost almost nothing and could be scavenged from anywhere. Now, I need to be very clear about the modern application. This is an outdoor or extremely well-ventilated emergency method only. Open flames indoors produce carbon monoxide, which can kill you. During the Texas blackout, more people died from carbon monoxide poisoning from improper indoor heating than from the cold itself. If you're in a true survival situation with no other options and proper ventilation, this method works. But for most people, the safer modern alternatives are alcohol stoves, tea-like candle heaters with terracotta pots, or simply layering up and using body heat. No, this trick exists, but respect the dangers. Trick number 8: layered clothing indoors. The 8th trick is wearing layered clothing indoors. Depression-era families didn't walk around their cold homes in t-shirts expecting the building to be warm. They dressed for the cold inside just like they would outside. The philosophy was simple: heat the body, not the building. Wool was the fabric of choice because it insulates even when damp. Families wore wool-long underwear as a base layer, multiple shirts and sweaters on top, doubled-up socks, and always a hat or cap. You lose a huge amount of heat through your head. Keeping it covered makes a significant difference. Accounts from the 1910s prairie winters describe heavy wool on wool, long underwear every single day, thick coats, and scarves worn indoors as normal. The modern application is to invest in quality base layers. Merino wool is expensive but worth it. Fleece works well as a middle layer. Always keep warm hats, thick socks, and fingerless gloves in your emergency supplies. If the power goes out, put on more clothes before you start worrying about heating the room. Trick number 9: hot food and drinks. The 9th trick is eating hot food and drinking warm beverages. This one seems obvious, but most people underestimate how much hot food warms you from the inside out. During the Depression, families cooked hot oatmeal overnight on the stove. They made soups from whatever scraps were available. They drank hot water with a splash of vinegar or honey when coffee was too expensive. Hot food raises your core body temperature. It's fuel for your internal furnace. The modern application is to stockpile instant oatmeal, soup packets, and tea bags in your emergency supplies. If you can boil water, you can warm yourself from the inside. Don't eat cold food during a winter emergency if you have any way to heat it. Those calories will warm you much more effectively when they go in hot. Let me bring this back to where we started. Your great-grandparents heated their homes for $0 because they had no choice. They learned to concentrate their warmth into one room. They stuffed newspapers into every crack. They heated bricks for their beds and layered wool clothing like armor against the cold. They huddled together as families and ate hot food to warm their bodies from the inside. These 9 tricks kept millions of Americans alive during the worst economic disaster in modern history. And they'll work just as well today if the power goes out and the temperature drops. You don't need expensive generators. You don't need fancy survival gear. You need knowledge, preparation, and the willingness to do what works instead of what's comfortable. Print this list, share it with your family, practice these methods before you need them. Because when the grid goes down and the cold starts creeping in, the people who survive won't be the ones with the most money. They'll be the ones who remembered what their great-grandparents already knew. Stay warm, stay prepared, and I'll see you in the next one.